Welcome to Book Crew. We are on KCCC 9:30 a.m. in Carlsbad, New Mexico on Mondays at noon. We're also available wide on every major podcast platform out there and on video at YouTube and Rumble. On Book Crew, we help writers get their book written, edited, published, and promoted. I am writer and marketing Jedi Dirk Hooper, and I'm joined as always by author and editor Beth Freely. How you doing, Beth?
I'm doing good, Dirk. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. We don't have necessarily anything that we need to cover this time, so I'm going to go right straight to our feature interview, if you're ready.
Let's jump into it. Yeah, I'm ready to talk to this gentleman.
All right. Well, William Bernhardt is the award-winning author of more than 60 books, including the best-selling Ben Kincaid novels and the Daniel Pike legal thriller series. His latest release, The Superman Wars, continues his tradition of captivating storytelling that blends sharp legal insight with deeply human stakes. Bernhardt's body of work also includes historical fiction, poetry, young adult novels, and the Red Sneaker series for writers, which has inspired and instructed a new generation of authors. William, welcome to Book Crew.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Good to see you guys.
It's good to see you too. You're a local guy around. You're local to me.
Yeah, apparently I did not realize until we talked, but I'm 20, 30 miles from you or something in the suburbs of OKC.
Yes, you live out by a bunch of my friends. I have a whole cluster of friends that live out in your area.
Well, I used to be in Tulsa, but I moved here because my mom is here and she's 97. And let me tell you, she's as sharp as they come. Doesn't walk as fast, but she is lost. I hope I'm that sharp at 97. Right. And so, I wanted to get where I could keep an eye on things.
I have a mom who's 89 and she lives in Moore. So, I get that too.
My father-in-law's the reason why we moved back to New Mexico.
There you go.
Yeah. I think we've all been there.
There it is.
Yeah. Well, I'm coming to New Mexico next month. No, it's later this month. My daughter, Alice, wants to go on a road trip. I know she wants to see Carlsbad Caverns. And what else? I don't know. I've been to Roswell, but I bet she could be talked into that. I'm sure they've added some
let me know when you're in town.
Stuff.
Yeah, let me know when
that
you're
is
in town.
right in Beth's area.
Yeah,
that's why I was
dab. I live an hour from Carlsbad one way and an hour from Roswell the other way. So I live right smack dab in between.
That's perfect.
Well, William, what was your first novel and what made you want to write it?
Oh, well, I'll do those in reverse order. I don't know. Why does anybody want to write? You just get that bug. I got it very young. My aforementioned mother says that I was telling people I was going to be a writer when I was 7, which I know seems out there, but it's my mom, so we got to believe this. Before that, I had said I wanted to be a librarian. No. Before I'd said librarian, and then I, in time realized that these books aren't just there on a shelf. Somebody writes them. Like that's somebody's job. Mm. And I thought, well, that's the job I want. So I started sending things out and got my first rejection letter when I was 11, which I can prove because I've still got it, and like hundreds more. But kept my eyes on the prize, kept putting things out there, and eventually in 1991, boy, now I'm dating myself, but that'd be 35 years ago, my first book, Primary Justice, was published, and it was a hit, did about 500,000 copies in the first 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And, suddenly, and then they wanted more and more and more. And the Ben Kincaid series has gone on for 19 books, and I've done other series. Wow. And as you were nice enough to mention, some books on writing and 3 books of poetry, some young adult type stuff. But this is my first attempt at what I call narrative nonfiction. I've done historical novels before, but this time it's, nothing but the truth, told in a way that's engaging, I hope, but sticking to the facts. And I couldn't have invented a story like this anyway, so that's fine.
How was your background as an attorney shaped the way that you approach fiction and nonfiction?
Well, that was kind of how I first got into it. I was working on a previous book, one of those thrillers called Justice for All, which sort of dealt with this core art versus commerce conflict, which is still very much with us, I might add.
For
And I
sure.
started reading and looking into what happened to Jerry Siegel, the writer who came up with the idea for Superman, enlisted his best pal, Joe Shuster, to draw it. And together they created this wonderful character way back when. But, well, we can get into the details, but it didn't turn out the way Jerry wanted it to. And a few years later, he was watching other people get extremely rich off his character while he didn't. And before too long, he'd not only been fired and removed from the character, he'd had his name stripped from the credits and started suing. And that, of course, launched 70 years of litigation. When I first started looking, I thought, what can take 70 years? I mean, what's going on? But I couldn't find a very good explanation that was detailed enough to satisfy me. I think sometimes, and I'm not putting down anybody, but I think sometimes people who haven't suffered through law school have trouble dealing with motions and pleadings and suits and countersuits. And then there's an appeal, and then it's back to the trial court, and people, I don't understand. I thought, this is something I can straighten out. And I think I've done that. But I do want to tell people this isn't a book about litigation. That's actually a relatively small part of it. This is about Jerry Siegel's story, because in my mind, his story is every creator's story, every writer, or for that matter, artist, or for that matter, people like you who are creating original content and posting it on the internet. You know, we all have to protect ourselves because unfortunately, the thieves and vultures are still out there, and arguably more with us now than ever.
Well, what you're talking about is the Superman Wars.
Yeah.
And Superman is always timely. Yes, was a new film a year ago, and there's going to be a sequel coming up soon, plus Supergirl and the whole thing. But literally, Superman has been part of the public consciousness for, as you said, 70 years.
No, more like 90 almost, actually.
Well, right. I mean, it's just been forever. So tell us about the Superman Wars and what people need to know.
Well, I think I already indicated that this is narrative nonfiction. Let me be clear on that. That does not mean I invented anything, because I didn't. I didn't create scenes to flesh it out or invent dialogue to make it more interesting. You know, if there's a quotation in this book, I've got an eyewitness or I've got a historical contemporaneous document that I'm quoting. But I wanted to tell it that way because I wanted people to not just know what happened, you know, here are the facts, this is what happened. I wanted them to understand why it happened. And to understand that, you need to get inside Jerry Siegel's head. So I wrote the book factually, but from his viewpoint. Jerry was, of course, the writer in the team. So, of course, that's what I'm interested in. I love writers, and I could relate to a great deal of his story. You know, he was very precocious, both as a reader and writer, knew he wanted to be a writer, was putting things in the mail, typing them up and sending them out. I mean, he was published when he was a one-digit age, for Pete's sake, and he kept at it, kept pushing, kept trying to find the thing that'll break out big, you know, and make a big success. And he did eventually. As an 11th grader, he came up with the original idea for Superman. It went through various incarnations, and that's mapped out in the book. But eventually, he and Joe had put together a package. What Jerry wanted was a newspaper strip, because that was the big deal. We're talking about the 1930s, middle of the Great Depression. And newspaper comic strips are hugely popular. People read them every day. I mean, Mayor LaGuardia, during a newspaper strike, when people weren't getting their papers, he read the comics over the radio so nobody would miss out on their daily installment of Little Orphan Annie or whatever. That's how popular they were. And that's what Jerry wanted. And he kept sending things out, kept getting rejected because it didn't look like anything people had ever seen before. He eventually, after he's tried every newspaper syndicate there is, he eventually agrees to have it published in this new thing called a comic book. The modern incarnation of a comic book debuted in 1935. A guy named Major Nicholson, he'd been a former cavalry officer and a writer, and he came up with the idea of not just repackaging newspaper strips, but publishing news stories, like self-contained stories. He had written for the pulp magazines that were so popular then too, Amazing Stories and that kind of thing. And he saw comic books as being sort of in the same area, except with more pictures, combining pictures and words to tell a story. Jerry had done some work with him and trusted him, and so he eventually agreed to let him take a stab at Superman. Unfortunately, you probably already know this part, literally while this was all being worked out, another group of people, Harry Donenfeld and his associate Jack Leibowitz, had been scheming for some time to take over the comic book company, and eventually succeeded, basically by running up a lot of debt and then forcing the Major into involuntary bankruptcy. They fully assumed the company literally days before Action Comics #1 is published, with the first Superman story in it. But, Jerry didn't know who he was working with or really what was going on, but these people ended up having the company, and that turned out to be disastrous. And to get the thing published, as part of the very brief letter agreement that agreed to pay Jerry $130 for that first story, there was also a clause that said, and by signing this, you assign all the copyright and interest in the characters in this story to us. And that's how he lost control of the character. So, yeah, he made a mistake, a bad one, and boy, did it cost him. Bear in mind, these guys were very young. And, sure, it was a mistake. I won't make excuses, except to point out that Jerry lost his father when he was 17. Joe's dad was the elevator operator at a hospital. They didn't have an agent. They didn't have a lawyer. They didn't have anybody to advise them. They didn't have a writers' conference they could attend to try and find out more about the business. And that really hurt them. And eventually, Jerry he's drafted in 1943 for World War II, spends more than a couple of years serving his country, comes back to find that the company has totally taken over the Superman operation, even to the extent of hiring Joe Shuster, putting him in-house. They're running the whole show. Does he want to work for them? I mean, there's 10 years of abusive, and I mean abusive, correspondence between from Jack to Jerry, insulting, threatening, constantly saying, we're going to fire you, if you don't do X, Y, and Z. They supposedly had a 10-year employment agreement. I don't know what the good of that is when a boss keeps threatening to fire you. It seems pointless. And he came back and found not only had they taken over Superman, but before he left, Jerry had written a script for a new character, Superboy. Okay, sort of a new character. Superman when he's younger, and he's in a rural environment with Ma and Pa Kent, and he plays pranks on people with his powers and so forth. But the company had rejected his script 3 times. And then when he's gone and can't do anything about it, they run it, even though they don't own it. They've never bought it. They have no legal right to it, but they ran it anyway and turned Superboy into a series. So in 1947, Jerry decides he's going to sue to try and get his character back. Unfortunately, it does not turn out the way he hoped it would.
Yeah. So where does the book go from there? Does it follow Siegel through his life?
Yes.
And what he does, or does it bring us up to, because they are still dealing with legal ramifications of that agreement long ago.
Yeah, well, not so much with Superman, but it had huge ramifications throughout the industry. Jerry sued, as you already guessed, he lost. But the worst part, as I already mentioned, is that they fired him. How dare you sue us? Never mind the employment agreement. You're fired. And worse, they're removing his and Joe's name from the feature. I mean, no more creator credit. even when they reprinted old stories that had been published before, they colored over the names so that they wouldn't get credit. Now,
Wow.
I mean, we could argue all night about the legalities. I think he got ripped off. No question about the fact that he shouldn't have signed that. But taking their names off their creation, that is just morally and ethically wrong. It's reprehensible. And that's what Jerry had to lead with. So he continues, he tries to fight. He sends letters which get progressively more out there. By 1951, he's sending letters to not only Jack and Harry, but pretty much everybody they knew, trying to get somebody to listen to him. I mean, I laugh, but it's kind of tragic because I do think he was really stressed. His daughter, Laura, had been born the same year, and I get it. I've got daughters too. You want to do everything in the world for them, and he couldn't. I think in 51, if it were happening today, I think we'd say Jerry had a nervous breakdown. And he said later, I found an unpublished manuscript. He wrote about 100 pages of an autobiography before he passed. And he says in it that he felt suicidal at times. I think the only reason he survived is because his wife, Joanne, who, by the way, had been the original model for Lois Lane, she was there to kind of take charge of things and calm him down. And she, in effect, became the agent he never had. But he still didn't own Superman. He still didn't get any money from it. He didn't even have a seat at the table. Throughout the 50s, his daughter and other kids were watching George Reeves on television. He couldn't stand it because you can watch every episode of that series and you will never see created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. There's no creator credit at all. It's like Superman just sprang up spontaneously or something. Yeah. No credit for anyone for a very long time, for decades. And that just tore Jerry apart.
As it should. I mean, he poured his heart and soul into this character. So, yeah. Right.
And he'd been waiting for his big breakthrough character. He got it. He always wanted a newspaper strip. He got it. Superman was a newspaper strip in about 8 months after the comic book debuted, and yet he didn't make the deal because he didn't own the character anymore. Now he and Joe did get paid in the early years before they were fired, and for the Depression that was good money, but it didn't last. Of course, it never does, and I don't think I kind of get tired of people focusing on the money because I don't think that was the most important thing for Jerry. I don't think it's the most important thing for most writers. I mean, sure, we've all got to eat and we want to take care of our kids, but you don't go into writing because you think, oh, now I'm going to be a billionaire. I mean, I think that's happened once in human history, but normally I was thinking JK, but whatever.
JK Rowling.
He might be up to that level maybe by now, but that wasn't the main thing to him. It was his character. He couldn't stand these corporate suits deciding what Superman should do, and they did very much change the tone of the feature. Of course, all things evolve over time, but still, he wasn't even consulted. He wasn't involved, and that just tore him apart.
Why do creator rights battles continue to resonate so strongly today?
Well, the simple answer to that would be money. Even in Jerry's era, there was no way they were going to mess around with the rights to Superman. He was an instant hit. He gave credibility to this new kind of scrappy thing called a comic book. He invented the superhero genre. Many others, including the hero Beth is wearing today, would come after Superman because that feature was, and now we have superhero shows and movies, and the comic books still exist, but they're basically like a cauldron where people are getting movie ideas. So these rights
when they use them,
so these rights have become more valuable than ever before. Superman today makes Warner Brothers on average about $450 million a year. A year.
Well, that's just in royalties, not even counting any news stories coming out of the comics or the movies or TV shows. That's
Right.
just
I mean,
royalty.
are comic book creators treated better today than they were then? Yes, much. And a lot of that is due to the fight of Jerry Siegel. He was the first American writer to sue his publisher. He was the first person to stand up to power, to use a common phrase today, and say,
Sure.
this isn't right. I'm not putting up with it. And he suffered in the short term. In 1951, when he was writing those really inflammatory letters, he thought the whole creator community would rise up and support him. It did not. In fact, I found a letter, this is mentioned in the book, in 1951, Jack Kirby and Joe Simon, both great comic book creators, send a letter to the comic book company, just letting them know that we don't appreciate all this stuff that Jerry Siegel is doing. It's a
Interesting.
total suck up to the
Wow.
boss kind of thing. Well, they were doing work for the company then.
How?
But, flash forward a few years after the Siegel family has fought and fought for decades, what happens? Well, here comes the Jack Kirby estate suing Marvel, making the same exact claims Jerry did first. They even use the same lawyers the Siegel family was using, so they can bring their own suit and benefit from what nobody supported at the time Jerry was doing it.
Very interesting. I was just about to mention Jack Kirby because it seems like his path mirrored what you're mentioning with Siegel.
Yes, very much so.
Among many others. I just watched a documentary.
Jack kept his name on the features. He did get paid something, but I think eventually, of course, there's a question over returning original art, but I think he got tired of someone else taking credit for characters and stories that he felt he had been the true writer of. And so eventually there was a lawsuit.
Yeah. I just watched a documentary the other night on the Image creators and why they left Marvel Comics when they formed Image Comics. And it's much for the same reasons. It's for money and rights and credit and kind of having control of your characters.
Yeah. I will say this in fairness, I keep saying the comic book company. I don't say DC, and there's a reason for that. DC did not become the official name of the company until 1976 when Jeanette Kahn took over, when she became the president and eventually publisher of the company. That was a dramatic change in how that company did business. Before that, when it was Harry, Jack, and their progeny, Harry, who'd been indicted twice for pornography and had been rum running during the Prohibition, had mob connections. They both did. And, Jeanette Kahn was the first actual person with a college degree and actual corporate experience running the company. And she, helped by Paul Levitz, started to turn things around and make the company a little more creator friendly, because they realized that grown-ups were reading comics. It wasn't just 8-year-old boys. It was predominantly older people, and that meant they needed better talent, so they had to do a little better for them. So they helped. I mean, is it still where I think it should be? No, of course not, because I'm a writer. I'm always going to advocate for writers, but I will give credit where due and say it's better now than it was then.
Wasn't it Superman the motion picture that forced some of the credit changes? Yes,
I'm glad you brought that up, because some people listening, if they've got enough gray hair like I do, they'll remember in 1975 when there was a huge PR campaign run. Jerry and Joe were helped by Jerry Robinson, who had done uncredited creation work for Batman, and Neil Adams, who was the top comics artist at that time. And they got together to try and help these out, drummed up a lot of publicity, thinking DC won't want bad PR just before this movie comes out. And they were right. So what did Jerry and Joe ultimately get? A $20,000 pension. $20,000 a year.
Wow.
Roughly what Warner Brothers, that's what they were paying their secretaries. We would now call assistants at that time. It got better over time. They got cost of living bumps, but still, it was such a token gesture. I just want to say to anybody listening, if you remember that happening in 75 and you think, I already know this story, you so don't. There's 75 more years. No, there's 50 more years between then and now of squabbling over character and rights yet to come. Even after Jerry passes, his family brings suit for a reason. Congress changed the copyright laws in the 1970s, and
Right.
they took advantage of that. I won't go into the detail. I will say, because I'm probably making this sound relentlessly depressing, that it's really not, because it does have a happier ending in the future. And what really compels me most about it is that to me, it speaks to the power of family. You know, we've all got families. We're all talking about our moms earlier, right? Everybody loves their family. This is a family that stuck together and fought. And that's why it turned out as well as it did for them. That's why they finally got the credits restored. Right. I had the pleasure of talking to Jerry's daughter, Laura Siegel, who has not spoken on the record before, in part because, for other people writing books, in part because there was pending litigation. And I'm sure their lawyers told them to, not talk. But she and her sons, Jerry's grandsons, talked to me. And that was just such a heartwarming thing to see how this family still cherishes the guy who created Superman. Anyway, so about that movie, I think that's 1978. And finally, they're getting a small pension and they've gotten their names restored. So they're going to see it for the first time on the big screen in this movie. Mm-hmm. They've been invited to the red carpet premiere. As Laura says, she's sitting in the audience between her two parents, her mom, the model for Lois Lane, on the right, and her dad, the model for Clark Kent, on the left. And by the way, the daughter of Clark and Lois grew up to be a reporter. How perfect is that? Right. Award-winning reporter. And she's sitting there, and 4 minutes and 16 seconds into the movie, you may remember how the credits sort of whoosh onto the screen. Yep. 4 minutes, 16 seconds in, it says, Superman, created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. And Laura said she felt both parents squeezing her hands, and she looked over at her dad, and there are tears streaming down his eyes. It just meant so much to him to finally see his name reconnected to his character, who's having his big screen, big budget debut. The crowd in the audience applauded. It just meant so much to him. It meant so much to the whole family.
Yeah, finally That's getting wonderful. The credit where the credit was long overdue.
Yeah, exactly.
William, where can we get your book?
Well, I think it's at bookstores everywhere. If it's not, if you go into one and can't find it, you should complain a lot. But I know I can't go to every bookstore. I know it's available online. In fact, before we started, I checked the Amazon page because that's what authors do. You keep going. It's like crack for authors. You keep reloading your Amazon page. I might have gone up 2 points or something. And
no, we've never done that. No.
But as of a few minutes ago, the Superman War still had its #1 new release flag. Nice. And it's been out more than a week now. So
that's awesome.
I think it's
doing all right. That is seriously awesome, yeah.
Not easy to do. I'm going to put this, I'm going to hide everyone here. I'm going to put the cover.
Not easy to do.
Yeah. Didn't they do a great job with that? I love the cover.
It looks great.
Came up with. Well, it's about as much Superman you could show without actually showing Superman. You know what I mean? Because that would require licensing, and I don't think DC is going to license this book. So
for sure,
they did a good job.
I want to also, I want to encourage people to pick up your book, but I also want to talk about WriterCon. Can you tell us what WriterCon is? And what inspired you to create it?
Well, WriterCon is a series of programs, actually, but we have an annual writers convention every fall. It's Labor Day weekend. So this year it's September 4th through 7th at the Skirvin Hotel. You know this because you live in Oklahoma City. It's famous.
I'm very familiar with Skirvin.
It's historic and haunted, like all hotels seem to be. And it's just grown every year. We had over 300 people there. And it's a great way to get the knowledge you need so you can take advantage of it. Whatever kind of thing you're trying to write, whatever path to publication you want to pursue. We got people there who can help you, and agents and publishers and chances to meet with people and get manuscript critiques and whatnot, contests. But what I love the best about it is that it just gets like-minded people together. People
Yes,
have the same
yes.
creative mindset, and don't let what happened to Jerry happen to you. Talk
Right.
to people and find out what's going on out there. Find out what you need to do. Maybe you need to get an agent to protect you. Maybe you need to get a lawyer. Whatever it is, gather friends. And people do. I see it every year. They form critique groups or support groups, or they become beta readers for one another. And that's that's what I like best. We also do other things. We've got a small group retreat coming up in July, which, as the name would suggest, is a smaller group of people, like maybe 15 or 20, so we can break down in groups of 6 or 7. I really love that because that's my chance to work one-on-one with people. I can read their manuscripts and I can give them direct feedback on the manuscript. And that's when I feel like I'm really helping. I've seen people come out of there and then, on the last day tell me they feel like they're writing better, like at a higher, more professional level, just in the course of 5 days. And we should go back and count how many people left the retreat and published a book in the next year or so, because it would be a bunch. We see a couple every year. So I love that too. And there's a newsletter on Substack, and there's a podcast and all this stuff. And, so if you're a writer, if you're serious about wanting to see if you can build this into a real career, or maybe you've already published some and you want to take it up to the next level, that's what WriterCon is for. It's there to help. You asked me why I started this, so let me circle back now that I've remembered that other question. I started this because I'm aware that I've been extremely fortunate. I mean, I'm a punk kid from a small town in Oklahoma who dreamed about being a writer, but didn't have a clue how to make that happen. There were no writers in my town of which I was aware. Nobody you could get advice from. I mean, I eventually worked it out, of course, but I'm trying to make it a little easier for the next generation of people who aspire to write. I think this is the best time in the world to be a writer. There are so many more opportunities, so many more paths than there were even 35 years ago when I started. But you can't take advantage of that stuff if you don't know about it. So WriterCon is kind of my way of paying it forward, giving back, because I know how fortunate I've been. This is what I've been dreaming of since I was 7, and now I get to do it every day, and I can still feed my kids.
Yeah.
Perfect.
What do aspiring writers most need to know?
That's a good. There are so many things, but what do you most need to know? I'm going to say this and go with me. You remember, Dirk, have you read Superman for All Seasons or All-Star Superman?
Yes.
Great,
yes.
Grant Morrison. You remember the scene where he looks down at this little boy and says, "You're stronger than you think." Yeah, I can't even say that without starting to get a little choked up.
Yeah, you get choked up with that one, yeah.
Well, that's what I say to writers out there. You're better than you think. You're a better writer than you think you are. I know when you write stuff and it's first draft and it's all rough and awkward and it feels, I feel the same way. And I've written, this is my 67th book, and I still
Amazing.
I still finish a first draft and think, yeah, when did you forget how to write? That was terrible. And then you go back and reread it, and it's not quite as bad as you thought it was. And then you start revising it and revise it again and revise it again. I tend to do a lot of, cutting and revising. Mm-hmm. I just want it to be the best book it can possibly be. And you can do that too. Don't get frustrated. And most importantly, don't quit. Hang in there. If you're here for the long term, you can succeed. This, talent is a good thing to have, obviously, but I don't think it's that uncommon. It is uncommon? Perseverance. To have the stick-to-itiveness, to stick with it, even when you're getting rejected and you don't feel good about your work and, maybe somebody's hassling you for doing it, just put all that out of your mind and keep doing the work. If you listen to that WriterCon podcast, I end every episode saying the same thing. It's like my mantra. I say, keep writing, and remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit. And I say that because I believe it. It was true in my case, when I went through about 10 years of getting rejected, but it paid off at the end, and it can pay off for you too. Just don't quit.
That is a great message. I love that message. That is great. I've got a lot of things to follow here for you. You've got a newsletter on Substack, and you've got a podcast. I'm going to follow both of those.
Fantastic. Yeah. Just go to Substack and search for WriterCon. It'll come. I have a newsletter for my work too, but they're both wonderful, but subscribe to both of them. But if you're a writer and you're interested in writing, definitely get the WriterCon newsletter and podcast. They don't cost you anything. For that matter, we've got a Facebook page where people, update about the latest scams targeting authors or latest opportunities, new agent, new publisher. So if you're interested and you're serious about trying to break into this, join the Facebook group. That also costs $0.
Yeah, there are a lot of resources out there that weren't available, even 10 or 20 years ago.
That's right. Beth,
sure.
I just want to say I closed the doors over there for exactly this reason.
I can't.
My cat Bustifer is right there, pressed with his nose pressed against the glass.
I'm actually surprised my one female cat, Peanut Butter, isn't in here. She usually hears Dirk's voice and she comes running. Oh, apparently she's in the chair. So
I'm sorry, Dirk. You were trying to ask me a question. What was that?
We're coming in on the end now, so
going through all this stuff. Mm-hmm.
My question to you is, what do you have planned next?
Oh well, can't you guess? I switch shirts real quick, and I might point out this was suggested by my publisher. But anyway, next year's book is going to be the Batman Wars. And about Bill Finger and Jerry Robinson and all the people who should have been credited in addition to Bob Kane. If anything, to me, that's an even more horrible story than this one. And that's a high bar.
Really?
Yeah.
And plus, it's one that's much less known. So I'm anxious to get that book out. In fact, I'm taking off tomorrow to go on a flight to Indiana, go do some research for that book.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's scheduled for May, assuming I finish in time. I think I will. That's scheduled for May of next year.
That's awesome. All right. Well, tell everyone where they can find you and any social media that you have or anything else.
Thank you. Well, the WriterCon website is predictably WriterCon.com. Am I saying that right? WriterCon.com. And my website is just WilliamBernhardt.com. And let me say this too. If there are people listening, aspiring writers who are interested in kind of taking it up to the next level, go to the website, look at the conference. But right now, the early bird prices are in effect. I'm not trying to, make everybody think too quick, but it is a fact that those early bird prices go away at the end of May. So if you're thinking about registering, register now.
Yeah. That is awesome. All right. Well, William, thanks for being on the show. We sure appreciate having you here, and we welcome you back anytime.
Oh, well, let's get back and talk about Batman next year.
Let's do it. Yeah. That'd be great.
Sounds
all right,
great.
Beth. Tell us where we can find you.
Well, at the end of this month, you guys can find me at the Books in Santa Fe signing event at the Drury Plaza Hotel in Santa Fe on Saturday, May 30th from noon to about 4:00 in the afternoon. So come out and see me. Otherwise, you can find me at the usual haunts: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at BA Freely. And if you can't remember any of that, just go look on my link tree. And you can also find me on my websites, BethAnnFreely.com, HouseOfTheVixenBladePress.com, and of course at the Muses Funhouse.
All right. I am asking everyone to get over to my Substack, which is katiehooper.substack.com, where I will be sharing the first few chapters of my book if you're interested in that. Before we go, I want to say that Beth A. Freely is offering web design and book trailer services, and I'm offering author social media management, designing book covers, and doing author branding at themusesfunhouse.com. I'd like to invite everyone to join and participate on our Book Crew Facebook group. It's facebook.com/group/Book Crew Podcast. Join and tell your author friends. Finally, visit our site, bookcrewpodcast.com, for the information about this episode, our previous episodes, and articles from Beth and me about how to write, edit, publish, and promote your book. Thanks to our guest, William. For Beth A. Freely, I'm Dirk Hooper saying, dream hard.
Thanks for having me. Good talking to you guys.